Hello, my name's Colin. I work for the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service. I work within the Community Action Team, which is part of our prevention and protection side of things within the fire service. So what I'm going to do today is go through our secondary school level bonfire and fireworks safety presentation. Ideally, we'd love to have come and seen you all in person at schools and groups to give the talk, but because of the COVID situation, some buildings and schools are still currently not accepting visitors. So hopefully this will allow us to get the safety points over to you because it is an important topic. So we are coming up to that time of year, 5th of November, when suddenly everybody thinks it's okay to run around setting piles of wood on fire, playing with fireworks, doing things they maybe shouldn't be. So it's just a reminder, yes, it can be a good, fun, exciting time of the year, but you must do it safely. Okay, there can be horrific injuries from bonfires and fireworks when things go wrong, and it still happens every year. So the more information we get out there about how to do it safely, the firework code, looking after ourselves and animals, for instance, hopefully the amount of injuries will go down. So, as I say, can't be there in person, and the other byproduct of COVID is that there aren't as many organised displays around as there maybe would be. So if there are, that's what we always suggest you go to, is they've got the biggest bonfire, the best fireworks, and you're going to get the most enjoyment. But we do understand there aren't as many of them around, so there may be people having smaller little displays or bonfires at home. So it's just to go through these safety points to hopefully keep you safe. And again, there are some legal issues, just to remind you, as people get older into secondary school age, sometimes they're pushing the boundaries and maybe getting into a bit of bother that they could do without. So just a little reminder about that as well. So as I say, I'm going to go through the slides as if I was there in person. I'll take my little picture off the bottom corner of the screen just so you can see all the writing on the slides, and I'll just talk through them and I'll pop myself back up towards the end. Okay. Bonfires. So as I just said, ideally we'd like you to all do organised displays, to get the biggest and best enjoyment of the evening, but we do understand that some home displays may be going on. So just a few points to remind you about the safety around bonfires. It always puts a big strain on the fire service at this time of year with all the additional incidents that we have to attend in the run up to the 5th of November. But as I say, if you are going to be having one, I'll just run through the advice that we give. So there should always be one person responsible for the bonfire. So if it's in your garden at home or wherever it is, it should be an adult, responsible adult there in charge, not under the influence of alcohol, we have to add, and they're there to make sure everything's safe. Ideally, you should have some form of extinguishing the fire as well, whether it's buckets of water or a hose laid out near it, just in case things start to spread or get a bit of hand. Before you actually light the fire, so you may have had the pile of wood, there for a few days possibly. It's always good just to have a quick check around it underneath, maybe, make some noise or give it a shake, just in case any animals have crept under. They will be thinking about hibernation at this time of year as well, looking for places to build a nest or get their head down for a sleep. So always nice just to give a quick check, make sure nothing's going to get hurt or killed once you light the fire. I did mention wood there, so that's really what it should be if you're burning. It shouldn't be like the bin bags, wheelie bins, piles of rubbish. Things can go wrong if you do that, and again, injuries can happen. So it really should just be, dry wood that you're burning for a small bonfire. Children should always be supervised, so if you've got any younger brothers and sisters, you also have to make sure they're safe and kept a good distance away. Sometimes, embers can spark out the fire and, jump a little bit, so we don't want anybody to get any burns. So a good safe distance, and, you're not wanting to be chucking anything into the fire. So there is that caveman temptation, you grab a stick, you want to stick the stick in the fire, light the stick and run around, but that sort of thing, it's just asking for accidents to happen. So no throwing anything into the fire, definitely no throwing any fireworks or aerosols or anything like that into the bonfire, because it is just going to cause things to get out of hand. As I said, keep the bucket of water or the hose handy. If you do have any long hair or loose clothing, so keep your jacket zipped up, hair tied back, because again, it's amazing how quickly things can catch a little flame, and next thing your clothing or hair's getting singed or burnt. And then at the end of the night, make sure that the responsible adult, they put the fire out. So just gently pouring some water on it, maybe covering it with some earth or sand, for instance, but make sure it's properly out and not left to burn away with nobody around it. So the size itself for a bonfire, what would say, what's a safe fire? You've probably all got an idea in your head of this enormous inferno that you'd like to be burning away in your back garden, but that's not really practical. You can't do that. So we would say it should be about 18 meters away from buildings. Now that's actually pretty hard to achieve in a lot of gardens. That's like taking 18 big long steps away from your house, and that's how far away we're suggesting it should be. So good distance away from any buildings. It should be less than 2.5 meters in height. Now, that might not mean anything to you, but if you're in your house, in most houses with normal height ceilings, if you look up to the ceiling, that's just coming up to 2.5 meters. It's about 2.4 or thereabouts. So that's pretty tall, so your fire shouldn't be anywhere near as big as that. The other thing I'd say is just consider what's above and around the fire. So any overhanging trees or bushes, you don't want it too near a fence or any decking in the garden. And even things like phone and power cables can sometimes run across gardens. So just have a look around above before you light the fire, or the adult lights the fire, just to make sure that there's nothing there it could catch. And as I say, no rubbish, bin bags, things like that you don't know what's in amongst it, because that could cause explosions. The fire could then rapidly spread, and we don't want it to get out of hand or catch anything else and start to cause damage. The firework code. You've maybe heard of this before in the past, but the firework code is just like a list of instructions or guidance to keep you safe when you're using fireworks or fireworks are involved in a display of any sort. So what I always try to remind people is effectively a firework's a little explosive device. Okay, now again, every year sometimes people decide that they can go about carrying them, lighting them, throwing them. You wouldn't do that with, bullets, guns, bombs, grenades if you were in the army. And effectively, it's the same idea. Fireworks are explosives. They have gunpowder and they've got things that burn at very high temperatures. So they really should be treated with the respect that deserves. So the firework code, that's, as I say, it's a list of instructions to keep everybody right. So I'll just run through them quickly on the screen. You can see them there. So the first one is that any firework displays must be finished before 11 at night. So it's just about, being antisocial. If you're setting them off at 2 or 3 in the morning, it's keeping people up, and it's just not fair on everybody else. So it is laid down in law that firework displays should be finished before 11 o'clock. You should only buy fireworks from licensed retailers, so there's only a certain amount of shops are allowed to sell them each year, and they should only be selling properly made, safe fireworks. So they should have those. BS just stands for British Standard. It's just like a seal of approval, if you like, that they're made to a good quality, and the CE mark is a similar thing. So you shouldn't be buying ones that say for industrial use only, or for organised displays only. These home fireworks you buy should be smaller, and they should have these markings on them. Each one will have instructions on them. So it may be that the little box comes with something to light the fireworks, and then each one will say how to do it. So it might be that it says, sink into some sand to keep it upright, or if it's a rocket that flies up, it might say, where to point it, things like that. So follow the instructions. They're there to make the firework go off properly, to give you the most enjoyment, and they're also there to keep you safe. As I just said, if the box comes with one of those long tapers that burns slowly for lighting it, then that's what you should use. It's not a case of getting a blowtorch out and trying to get it to go quicker, or sitting there with a lighter trying to light it. If it comes with something to do that for the fireworks, then that's what the adult in charge of the display should use. I know you guys probably want to get involved and help, and it's tempting. But as I say, it really should be one person in charge of the fireworks, and they deal with everything. So any naked flames, so that includes your little bonfire, any barbecues, little fire pits, anything like that, and cigarettes, should be nowhere near any of the fireworks. The ones you aren't using, they should be kept well away in a box or a tin, away from the one that is in the middle of going off. But as I say, no naked flames that could accidentally set the fireworks off when you're not expecting it. If one does go wrong and it's lit and then nothing happens, this is one everybody knows, you don't go back to a firework once it's been lit. Okay, it could still go off all of a sudden without any warning. So if it doesn't go off, you just have to leave it, and once a good period of time has passed, then it can be put into a bucket of water and probably left for a day or so, just to make sure it's properly soaked and it's not going to go off and hurt anybody. You never put fireworks in your pockets, and you never throw them. It should go without saying, but we still get it now and again. But any lit fireworks that are thrown is basically just like throwing an explosive device at somebody. And the reason we say don't put them in your pockets, if you're running about with even small little bangers or things like that, the friction in your pocket can build up heat, and then it could be enough to set off the powder within the fireworks, and that could lead to some horrible burns on your legs within where the pockets are. Any ones that fly up into the air, so the rockets, should be pointed well away from anybody watching the display. So you don't want it pointing towards people or coming back over towards them or going up above the house. It should be ideally pointing away from anything that it could land on or burn, because they do go very high, very hot, and they can set things on fire. The bonfire itself, you should never be using any paraffin or petrol or anything. We call them accelerants, so nothing that will make the fire burn more quickly, because they give off fumes as well. So you may think you're lighting a wet bit of wood, but the fumes around it would light before the flame got to the wood. So again, it can lead to injuries and the fire getting out of control much too quickly. And the last point, I've already mentioned it, but once the fires or your display's out and everybody's going back inside or off to bed, just make sure whoever's in charge of it, make sure it's safe and nothing's been left burning or unattended that could cause any accidents or fires later on. This is one of our adverts we sometimes put out, make it up into posters and things. So you may have seen it around in maybe shops and windows, but it's just getting over that point. It says at the top there, some kids started the bonfire for a laugh. So the little points there, I know it's tempting, but you can't really be out with a group of your pals setting a fire. Okay, there isn't that responsible adult in charge of it. So if somebody sees that and they're worried about it, they probably will phone 999, and we probably will have to come and put it out because it's not been done in the proper manner. The other side of it is that it says there below the firefighter, it could have delayed us attending a serious house fire. So, it's true. A fire engine can't be in two places at once. If we're called out and having to deal with all these little bonfires that are started all over the place, we can't be somewhere else at the same time. Okay, now the incidents we really need to be at are those where people could be hurt or killed, and that's house fires, that's car accidents, things like that. If we're out chasing bonfires or hoax calls, we can't be in those other incidents. And I would hate it to be somebody that you know or care for or love that gets hurt or worse because we weren't there in time because we were out chasing bonfires and trying to deal with things like that. So it's keeping that in mind, going to the organised displays or doing things safely with using the guidance that I've talked about already. There are various rules and regulations surrounding fireworks because they are explosive devices effectively. So it's just to make you aware of them. There were some changes in all these rules and came into effect 30th of June this year. So the only times that you can actually buy them out of shops are between 7 in the morning and then 6 in the evening. So we're not wanting people turning up at a shop 9, 10 at night, one of the 24-hour supermarkets looking to buy fireworks maybe after they've had a few drinks. So that's the only time that you can actually buy them, between 7 and 6. The amount that you can buy is limited to 5 kilograms, and that's actually quite a lot in weight. That would be a lot of fireworks, so you shouldn't be able to buy any more than that in one go. And the times that you can set them off, you can only use the fireworks between 6 p.m. and 11 p.m. So again, that's just to try and keep it to a fairly short space of time in the evening once it's dark, but then it's not putting people through hours and hours and hours of bangs and explosions. So 6 till 11, and then all the displays have to be finished by that point. Unintended outcomes, so this kind of leads on from the previous slide. The legality side of it, so it's illegal for anyone under 18 to buy fireworks. So if you're caught with them, it could lead to unnecessary trouble that you hope to avoid. Now remember, the police are always there to keep you safe. If you're ever in any trouble or bother, the police are who will keep you safe, protect you. But at the same time, if you are doing something that you shouldn't be, they have to keep everybody else safe and protect them. So avoid doing this, avoid putting yourselves in the positions where you could get in trouble, because we don't want you getting in, caught doing silly things, and next thing you've got a criminal record, and all that does is start to narrow your choices later in life. You're at secondary school age. You can do anything you want in the future. But if you start picking up silly charges for things, all it does is to start to limit those choices when it comes to jobs or college courses, or even going certain places to travel. So if you can avoid it, you don't want to be getting in trouble with that sort of thing. They can be fined up to £5,000 if caught throwing fireworks. So again, that's a lot of money, and it would probably lead to some sort of criminal record as well. So easily avoided by just not doing those sorts of things. Badly planned and positioned bonfires can lead to fire spread. So all that means is that every year we get bonfires that then spread to fences, that spread to sheds, maybe spread to houses even. So it's just being considerate, looking around, thinking about it before you do it, planning it, and having that responsible person in charge. Another thing that we do still get is hoax calls. So a hoax call is when somebody phones 999 and they know fine, there isn't a fire of any sort, but they maybe phone from a phone box and say, oh, there's a fire in whatever school. What happens then is our control room, they can't decide, oh, it's probably nothing. They have to send the fire engines to check that out. Now in most towns and cities, there's not an endless supply of fire engines. Most towns will maybe have one fire station, it might have 2 fire engines in it. Some of the bigger cities will have a couple more fire stations, but there's not this endless supply of fire engines. So if we're tied up at a hoax call, the fire engines can't be anywhere else at that time. So as I said earlier, if it's somebody that you care for that's then really needing help, we can't be there. So we'll have to just consider it's the same for all the emergency services. There's not many ambulances, there's not that many police officers and police cars, and there's definitely not that many fire engines. So we'll have to be at the most important incidents to help people who need it the most. So this is another one of our poster adverts that we put out, just leads on from that last point on the previous slide, and that's the slogan that we use: hoax calls cost lives. So it's never usually somebody's intention when they make a hoax call to cause somebody to die, but that could be the actual consequences. A fire engine cannot be in 2 places at once, as it says there on the poster. So if we're tied up with these, it just means we can't be at those more important incidents where people really are depending on us. It is a crime, and as you can see there, the penalty can be up to 3 months in prison, believe it or not, and a fine of up to £2,500. So just think before you do anything. Think, should I really be doing this? Could it affect somebody in a way that I don't really want to happen? All 999 calls are recorded at our control rooms, and there's no fancy codes that you can put into your phones to protect the numbers. So they have the recording, they have the numbers, and generally somebody always gets traced back. And there's even been cases of us taking recordings into schools to say, does anybody know whose voice this is? And usually somebody can, tell us who's made these calls from their voice, and then we'll also have the numbers. So just not something you want to get involved with at all. I'm going to give you a little break now from listening to me droning on, so I'm going to show a short video clip. So it's based down in Merseyside near Liverpool, and it's the events that all happen in the video are all true and did happen to a boy down there, and it involves an aerosol can in a bonfire. So as I say, this all happened in real life. It's obviously for this, it's played by actors just for the film clip, but the events themselves all happened. So just consider what happens to him throughout this.
What's going on?
Okay, Danny, my name's Dave. I'm one of the doctors here. I'm going to be looking after you. So don't want you to worry. What we're going to do is we're just going to put an oxygen mask on, and we're going to cut this jumper off and attach some leads. Okay, and then we're going to give you something for the pain. Okay, you might feel this little cool on your skin, Danny. Don't be worried.
Alright. Just going to soothe that pain. Pop this mask over your face, Danny. Keep it nice and cool.
What happened? See you later, Mum.
Bye, love. Be careful.
I will.
Mum, why doesn't he want to come to the park with us and watch the fireworks?
He's a big lad now, Liv. He's at that age where he wants to be with his friends. He's sensible and they're a good bunch. But don't worry, we'll have a good time too.
We're just going to...
Look for that James. Yeah, that was fun.
Quick, get the gun.
Go on, lad. Get him now.
What's going on there?
Go ahead, Emma.
Ops 4 from Mike 12 Papa 1. Appliance has been hit by a firework. Windscreen has been damaged and is now unable to proceed to incident. Request another appliance to be dispatched.
The bigger lads, maybe 16, 17. I only caught a glimpse of them.
Just because it's November the 5th, some of them think they can do what they want, but guess what, they can't. The CCTV around here is fantastic. We'll catch them.
That's really stupid, that. He could have been on the way to save someone's life.
I know, yeah.
Anyway, let's go to the park. We can cut through the woods.
Where are we going now?
Hey, lad. Lad.
Yeah.
Come here a minute, lad.
Nah, I've got to go to the car.
Come here, lad. Don't worry about it, honestly.
No, we have to go on.
Alright, don't worry about it. Don't be a wuss. It'll take a minute, lad.
It's me.
Quick phone now, bud.
Ambulance, quick.
You okay, Tony?
We'll be there soon.
Okay, Danny, you're just going up a little bit. Let's switch him over onto the oxygen.
Danny, I'm just going to cut your top off, okay, so we can have a little look at you and see if you've got any burns on your chest.
They've said you're going to need skin grafts. It's really going to help with the scarring.
Wish it never happened.
It's okay, love.
So we've seen what happened to Danny in the video. All true events, these things all happened, and he did end up with those horrific injuries. Obviously it was played by actors, but you know, that is what happened in the real life situation. So he will be affected with that for the rest of his life. You know, he'll have the visual scars that you'll see every time he looks in the mirror, but there'll also be the scars that you can't see, the things on the inside, the psychological damage. So again, that could affect him for the rest of his life. The way he looks, it may completely change the path his life would have taken. You know, it can have a huge consequence on people, all from one throwaway action of putting the aerosol into the fire and dragging him over to look at it. So there's lots of points in the video there. You know, they had set the fire that they shouldn't have. There was things being thrown at the fire engine so it couldn't carry on to then put any fires out. It wasn't the younger guys with Danny that set the fire, but they got drawn into the situation. So there's peer pressure and all these sorts of things become involved as well. So he's heard his mum say as well of the doctor's skin grafts, and I mentioned it on one of the lines on the screen. So to help him get better, So a skin graft is basically the scarring from the burn doesn't grow with you, and it can sometimes be tight and it won't stretch. So skin graft is when good skin is cut from another part of your body and then put onto that area to try and graft the new skin on to try and hopefully make it look better. But he will have scarring for the rest of his life, and he'll never look the same as he did before he went out that night. And that's how much the consequences can affect you. I've got a picture of some sparklers on this slide now. So they're often seen as the nice acceptable face of fireworks at this time of year, and you know, people wave them around, sword fights go on with them, you write your name and you see the trails in the darkness, and they are very pretty to look at. But just bear in mind that nice fizzy sparkly bit is actually 1,500 degrees. Okay, so that's hot enough to melt some metals. That's why the stick that the sparkler's on is usually all twisted afterwards. It's a metal stick, but it twists with the heat. 1,500 degrees, you know, you might think, well, yeah, it's pretty hot. So if you were to imagine when you boil the kettle, that's 100 degrees, so 15 times less. And by the time you have your tea or hot chocolate with milk and all the rest of it in it, it's well below 100 degrees. And you can think how hot that feels if it splashes on your hand. So 1,500 degrees the sparklers are. It's also 5 times hotter than a barbecue. So again, you wouldn't be chucking barbecue coals around at each other and waving them around in people's faces, so we shouldn't be doing it with sparklers. Most injuries, sparklers cause the most injuries around this time of year out of all the fireworks, so it could possibly be down to younger children getting to use them. So there shouldn't be anybody under 5 that gets to use sparklers, unfortunately. You should always have, you know, fully clothed, covering your arms, gloves on as well, just to protect yourself. And then once they're out, have a bucket of water to put the stick of the sparkler in there. You can see the next 2 pictures, you know, they're not pleasant to look at, but it's real life. These were injuries caused to quite a young looking child, I would say. Burns on the arm and the hand, so you know, they may have scarring for the rest of their life there as well. And sometimes if your hands are badly burnt, they lose their proper function and they may not work properly as well, so just to consider all those things. The next picture here, so that's an x-ray of somebody's nice healthy hand. So somebody had been out around bonfire night, had a firework, lit it in their hand, they held on to it. So they shouldn't have been in their hand lit in the first place, but they held on to it too long and it exploded. So we do know that they are explosive devices, and then that was the x-ray of their hand afterwards. So quite a difference. That hand will never ever work as well as it did before. They may lose fingers, it won't look like a hand even once it's been patched up by the surgeons. If you're a gamer, your Xbox or your PlayStation controller, you know, you'll never hold it the same way again. If you like your one-handed fast texting, you won't be using that hand to do it. And if that was the hand you wrote with, again, you're going to struggle with that. So please think about these things. Please don't do any silly nonsense with the fireworks. I mentioned animals and pets back in one of the earlier slides when we were talking about bonfires and checking underneath them. Just to go into a little bit more detail with it and talk about some actual cases that have happened. So you see the dog at the top looking through the little tunnel. Most animals don't like fireworks night. They don't like the bangs. It just scares them. So walk the pets earlier in the day, get them in the house once it's at night. If you've got outdoor pets that live in hutches or cages, you know, get them moved into a garage, into a shed, or even into the house just for those few hours when it's really bad. If, you know, the dog or the cat is in the house, even something as simple as putting the TV on or the radio on and turning it up a little bit, it can distract them enough just with the additional noise to focus on that it may keep their anxiety down without getting too worried about all the bangs. The picture on the bottom left there, you can see the vet in her green uniform with the cat. This cat was found the day after, so the 6th of November. It was found in the morning, covered in horrific burns and injuries, and it was still had pieces of tape stuck to it. So it was over in Edinburgh, and what had happened was a group of young people had grabbed the cat, taped some actual fireworks to it, and then started lighting them and setting them off. So just horrific cruelty for no reason, and the cat had terrible, terrible injuries, but through all the work of the vets they did manage to save it, which was good. The other cat on the other side, that was a cat called Fanta. So the picture at the top is how it was found after bonfire night. So for whatever reason, bonfire, yeah, fireworks stuck to it, attached to it, set off, and you can see the burnt ears, burnt face. There's a little hole on the side just above his front leg. Real terrible state. The cat would have been really traumatised, but with all the work of the vets, they did manage to save him, and that's Fanta in the bottom picture. So his ears still don't quite look right, but he was saved. But you can guarantee that the slightest bang will set that cat off into just sheer terror, so very cruel. The last picture there is a little hamster. It looks like he's munching on some broccoli. That was an adult, believe it or not, so it's not always young people that, you know, do things they shouldn't. But this was a man called Stephen Gordon from Glasgow, and he was 20, and what he did was took the hamster, taped it to a rocket and set the rocket off. So obviously the hamster sadly died, but he was caught for it, charged, and went to court and received a sentence of a couple of 100 hours community service, and he'll have a criminal record for the rest of his life. So a reminder, you know, every time he thinks about what he did, hopefully. But just cruelty, no more, nothing gained from it other than hurting animals, and, you know, other living things. So we don't need that to happen. I'm going to turn my camera back on for this slide, just so I'm looking directly at you. And this is really in case anybody out there has actually done this in the past, or is considering would do it in the future, or could be this year at bonfire night. But I'm looking directly at you if you've done this before. We do not like being attacked at bonfire night. Okay, I've had it personally in the past. It was quite a lot of years ago now, probably before most of you were born, in secondary school actually now. In the town I worked in, we were called out to a bonfire in a big grassy area, and then we saw the bonfire, proceeded over with a hose, and next thing there's big stones being thrown at us. There was rockets just whizzing just over our head, so they were being fired horizontally towards us rather than up into the air as they should be. Very unpleasant, you know, not an experience I'd wish on anybody. You know, we're there to keep you safe, so there's no reason that you should be feeling that you need to attack us around this time of year. It's not acceptable in any way, and the police and the authorities will take a dim view of anybody caught attacking any of the emergency services. You know, we're there to ensure that you have fun safely, so please don't think that it's okay to do that at this time or any time of year, just because you think we're spoiling your fun by having to put a fire out. If there's nobody in charge of it and somebody's phoned in to 999 because they're worried about a fire, we will have to attend, and we will have to put it out if need be. So you just have to accept that. Okay, it doesn't give you the excuse to launch a load of bricks at us and start throwing fireworks at us. We don't need that at any time of year. And the bottom line there, as I say, because we are there dealing with that sort of thing, or if the fire engine gets damaged or we can't carry on, we can't then be any of the bigger incidents that we've already talked about, where it could be somebody that you know is involved, and the consequences could be that we can't be there to help them. This is the final slide I'm going to show you. It's just about an organisation called fearless.org. So what it is, it allows you to report any crimes or anything you're unhappy about anonymously through an online forum. So you can just go to the website, and they can't track your IP address. They don't need any contact details. You're simply telling them what you know and not who you are. So it's just to make you aware that's out there. If there's anything that goes on that you feel you should report, or you would like to report to somebody, it can be done through that. So it's fearless.org. So that's the end of the presentation. Thank you for sitting through it and listening to everything I've had to say. Hopefully everything I've talked about will keep you safe and make you enjoy the 5th of November. You can see there on the bottom of the screen it says any questions. So normally if we'd been there in person, we would now have a wee discussion or talk about any points you wanted to ask. But if there is anything that has made you think about, please try and feed it back maybe through the teachers, and they could possibly get a question to the local fire station where you are, or maybe your local community action teams have been in touch regarding videos or given presentations. So if you can get the question to us, we'll always try and get back to you with an answer. So the last point I'd like to make, I have said it several times already, but organised displays are the way to go. But if you are doing it at home, just keep in mind all the points I've talked about. Do things carefully, don't be silly, keep it sensible, and I'm sure you'll have a great time on the 5th of November. And it is a nice time of year, it can be quite exciting, so we just want you to do it safely and enjoy it. So thanks for listening, and hopefully we'll see you another time. Bye bye.